All right. Well, you don't think that late night drinks necessarily gives rise to a successful business venture, but that is exactly how Lindsey Andrews and her co-founder founded Minibar Delivery. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, Lindsey, because I feel like it was a million years ago that we connected, and here we are today having this conversation. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm fascinated by the story because alcohol is a big part of New York City life, and that's how we gather, that's how we socialize. And that was exactly what was happening in your life when this idea came about. So let's start there. How did this company idea come to fruition?
Yeah, so back in 2013, my co-founder and I, we'd meet for Takeout Tuesday at my apartment. We lived a block away from each other. And one Tuesday, our Thai food from Seamless came easily, but disaster ensued when I was out of white wine. And we figured, if back then you could press a button and get anything delivered, so we thought there must be a solution. We must be able to get some wine delivered. And then we dove in and we saw that that wasn't possible. We could pick up the phone and call a liquor store, read our credit card number, guess what they have it delivered, which is, no one wants to pick up the phone anymore. No one wants to, guess what someone carries. So we thought, this is kind of our aha moment. Let's try to figure out how to bring easy delivery to this new category. So that was the impetus back in 2013 for Minibar Delivery.
And what was happening in your life at that time? You were getting your MBA. What was happening?
So my co-founder and I, we went to Wharton together, and then for about 4 years afterwards, we both, worked at startups. So I had kind of been in the consumable space. I was at Fresh Direct, the online grocer, and then I was at the Quidsi portfolio of brands, which was acquired by Amazon, which was like diapers.com, soap.com. So I worked on their drugstore vertical, soap.com, and then their pet vertical. I helped launch and run marketing. So we were both kind of working in marketing, in e-commerce. She had the luxury experience. I had the consumables experience, and alcohol felt like the perfect blend as the luxury consumable. So we thought, okay, this is the idea worth taking the plunge. And we both decided to leave our jobs and commit full time to Minibar Delivery in kind of late 2013.
So this is pre-pandemic, and I'm thinking about who became part of the ecosystem. It was local mom and pop owned liquor stores that were your first sort of partnerships, no?
Yes. So we were based in New York City. Our first city that we launched was New York. And actually, it's illegal to own more than one liquor store in New York State. So they're pretty much all mom and pops, which, has its pros and cons. Pro is you can walk in, the manager or owner is accessible. If they make the decision to, yes, I want to get on the Minibar Delivery platform, you can get that done very quickly. But it's just one store then, so it's just the radius around that one store. Whereas a chain, if you sign them up, you could get 50 stores and, huge coverage, but it's usually larger organizations. So the sales, contract, integration process is much longer. So we did work initially with mom and pops in New York City, which was our biggest market, and we all mom and pops generally, at least for wine and spirits. Beer, can be sold at chains. So that was kind of our launching point. We originally just launched with wine and spirits in February of 2014, and then we added on beer in kind of June of 2014, because also in New York, you can't sell beer with wine and spirits. So added complications and complexity. So we had to make it so you could do a 2-store checkout if you're adding beer and wine to your cart.
Yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania, and the blue laws there dictate that you cannot sell what is it, beer and liquor in the same establishment.
And all state run. So it's very hard to do our business model in Pennsylvania, as you would have to work with the government pretty much.
Yeah. What's the question I'm not asking you? I mean, there's so many steps between here's the idea on the back of a napkin to here's my fully fledged business ready to take its first customer.
Yeah, I mean, myself and my co-founder, we are not technical. So we had to find both an outsourced development shop and then also hire engineers. So that was kind of one of our first steps. Another was raising money so we could pay the dev shop as well as our first hires. So that was key. And then getting the liquor stores on our platform, because obviously without a partner, we couldn't deliver the alcohol. So those were kind of our 3 initial steps. And we were then kind of ready to launch in early 2014, which we did in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and then with Just Wine and Spirits, which was really exciting. And we had a great team to help us. But it was those early days, everyone's doing everything. Like if customers calling, asking where their order is, it's, one of us answering the phone and trying to figure that out for them.
For those that are founders that are listening right now, where did you go to hire the reliable help?
We got very lucky. So our CTO, Lara, had met previously at her previous job. He had interviewed for a job. I think, they were very interested in hiring him, but he ended up staying in his current role. So then we went back to him with this, and he was excited and so joined us. So we got really lucky there. And then he obviously kind of led hiring the other engineers, since that was his area of expertise. And it was harder for us to ask the right interview questions to know how good they were at coding. And then we hired some kind of like junior all around helpers that could, were smart go-getters that could help with anything. They could go into a liquor store and try to get them to sign on. They could answer customer service calls. They could write emails. They could kind of jack of all trades type of person. So we had a great, really all around team that we all loved working with, and we were excited to come to work every day. And, it was fun. Like small changes could make big differences. So I kind of
I'm really pressing on the hiring thing, because this is one of the things that I hear from my membership. I need to hire X, or I need to hire a salesperson. Where the heck do I go to find them? Do I put something up on Indeed? Do I look on LinkedIn? Do I post a posting? So when you think about the sort of man Friday, girl Friday position that was going into the liquor stores, like where are the pockets that you looked for that talent?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of like college graduates for the really junior all around people who had just graduated from college. We usually used our networks to try to find those people, or hired people from our networks previously, since we had been in e-commerce and kind of tech. We also really liked posting on Angel List. That was kind of our go-to for where we would post a job listing.
Okay, Angel List. That's good to know. So how would you say, now it's up and running, you've got the thing, the machine is up. How did you change the alcohol business?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a few ways. One, we kind of help modernize them. I mean, these liquor stores hadn't been modernized in basically 100 years. They were still the same shops. You walked in, everything's on the shelf. Generally, it was organized, like the wine's organized by region, but I don't think that's how most people shop. They might, be like, oh, I want a Pinot Grigio, or I want a Chardonnay. So I think we really helped modernize the industry and bring them online. It didn't make sense for every mom and pop liquor store to hire in-house tech to build a website, like a marketing team to market it, like people to like be customer service. So it made more sense to have that one unified platform that could do all of that for them, and they could focus on what they were good at, which was buying, merchandising, picking, packing, delivering alcohol. Whereas we could focus on what we were good at, which was building great tech, building a great shoppable website, building a brand, and doing marketing to bring the customers to help them grow their kind of delivery and e-commerce business.
So this tees up another thing that I think is a recurring pain point that I hear from women, whether they're lawyers, whether they're selling widgets, whether they're selling cupcakes, is how do I get clients? How do I get recurring clients? So when you talk about marketing, how did you get buy-in from the partners? How did you get buy-in from people that were willing to take a risk on this new way of shopping for liquor?
Yeah, so for the liquor store network, usually if there was a young person involved in the liquor store, they understood that the world was moving online, at that, they needed to get on board. So that helped with the sales process, but that was definitely not the case at all the liquor stores. So I remember one that was like 5 blocks from our office, where we wanted to get them on the platform, Bowery and Vine. And we would walk in like every 7 days, and they would be like, nope, we're not doing that. And finally they acquiesced, and we drove a huge portion of business to them, and I think they were really happy. But we just had to be really persistent and kind of make our case. And it got easier and easier with each one. One, because we learned what worked, but two, once we'd launched, we could show them actual data. We could say, go talk to our other liquor store, in a different neighborhood and see what they say about us. Let what we've done already speak for ourselves. So they would, it got a lot easier. And as we got press, then other stores would hear about us and say, what is this? So then we had sometimes incoming sales, which is obviously much easier to convert than outgoing sales and cold calls. And then in terms of, end consumers, we did a lot of marketing. We tried a lot of stuff. Obviously, we didn't have tons of money because we were an early stage startup. So we would do everything from like hosting happy hours in tech offices to get the word out. We would hand out flyers on the street about Minibar. We obviously did like Facebook and Google AdWords ads back then as well. We did direct mail. We've tried everything that there was out there. We would do sweepstakes with other companies, and like they would email their list and we would email their list, or do like co-promotions. A friend of mine started Urban Stems, the flower delivery business. We sat next to each other at Quidsi and we left the same day to start our companies. So a lot of the time, we would help each other both from a learning perspective of what's working from marketing, as well as like maybe on Mother's Day, we would send an email and be like, oh, get your champagne and your flowers from Urban Stems. And during the holiday, they might do the same for us. So we did a lot of partnerships and had to be scrappy because we didn't have unlimited capital.
So what I'm hearing you say, for anybody who's listening right now and is thinking about getting clients, recurring clients, is that you came armed with data, because the numbers don't lie. And you could say, this is how much revenue I'm going to drive to you based on the performance of another store. And then also you kind of blew it out with a limited budget, but you really blew it out with strategic partnerships that made sense in your space in order to be able to draw fresh eyes to what you were doing.
Yes. And we really focused on New York for a long time. Like we didn't launch another city for almost like 9 or 10 months. So we really wanted to get New York right, make sure that both the shopping experience made sense and consumers enjoyed it and were converting, as well as, which I think we kind of, at the beginning, my co-founder and I are both like marketers. We love building brands. We were excited about getting the consumers. But what we quickly realized was we had to build a great back end for the stores. Because like if they don't see the orders coming in and are confirming it, they're not going to deliver them in a timely manner. If we're not getting the POS data to know what they carry in store and their prices, then there might be out of stocks, and then the consumers are having a bad experience. So we realized early on, we really needed to focus on the experience for the liquor store employees and managers and getting the right data from them to serve to the consumers about what was available in that store. So we really, and over kind of our entire history, we always focused on that and improving the data and the experience for the liquor stores.
What kind of dashboard do you use to kind of monitor that? I mean, I imagine as you got, and this really tees up the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is scaling, but what's the dashboard? It's not Asana, right? When you're managing this big.
So we had kind of like a interface. We built everything in ourselves. It was all kind of custom. So we had a dashboard for the liquor stores, so they would know what orders are coming in, what their inventory was, what their hours were, their delivery zone, everything on our platform. So if they needed to change anything, they could let us know. And then we had like a dashboard at Minibar to understand every store's, out of stock rate, late rate. So we knew where the problems were and we could work with the store to improve them. So if they had a ton of late orders, we would say, do you want to change your hours? Do you want to reduce your delivery zone? Or maybe we'd find a store on the like outskirts of their delivery zone to help them with the demand. So we really focus on that because, the better our metrics are, or the overall metrics are for on-time deliveries and in stocks, that just makes our customers happier. Hopefully they'll come back more frequently, increase their lifetime value, and then we can spend more justifiably to acquire each customer and grow faster.
I was at a retreat for my own development last week, and one of the things that we talked about is that women just don't love numbers. Women don't love their own numbers. They don't love the numbers associated with their business. And it's actually a critical piece
definitely
to your success. So I wondered, what you would say to that.
I love numbers. I am happy to sit in an Excel spreadsheet for hours on end. I'm definitely a numbers person, as is my co-founder. So I think that's like an unfair, potentially like broad generalization
Yeah.
about women. Obviously,
But let me ask it a different way though. What would you say to someone that has that position? They don't love their numbers, but they need to learn to love them.
find a partner or someone on your team that loves numbers and can distill it down for you and tell you, or you can, figure out where the problem areas are.
Mhm.
Like maybe you don't want to like dive into the data and know the out of stock and lates for each store, but get someone on your team that can pull that data and present it to you and present maybe an action plan, or you can then, you definitely need the data, need to understand it. I wasn't potentially in Periscope putting together the reports and doing the SQL queries, but I had access to all the data and like could request those reports and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And obviously, if you're a CEO, you have to work closely with accountants, your finance department, whomever it might be, to really understand
Mhm.
your cash flow, how the business is doing, your growth. So I do think numbers are extremely important in
Agreed.
running a
Agreed.
business.
All right, let's talk about scale, because how did you scale and meet the demand that really blossomed during the pandemic?
Yes. I mean, I feel like most businesses scale and, they can predict the next month's numbers based on kind of their cohort curves or their last month's performance. But obviously, no one could predict the pandemic. So our business kind of went from 0 to 60 overnight, which is
Mm.
not normal. And, we were lucky to be a pandemic beneficiary. So kind of in mid-March of 2020, our business grew just tremendously. Our new buyers grew by, I think, like 600 or 700%. So every metric was up and to the right, like sales, stores wanting to get on the platform, advertising partners wanting to partner with us. So we partnered with all the big advertising firms, and they would do, we partnered with all the big liquor brands, and they would do advertising on our platform. So every metric except our customer service metrics and our lates and our on-time deliveries and our out of stocks, all those metrics did not do well, obviously, because we weren't prepared. We weren't staffed for a business that was much bigger from a customer service standpoint. Obviously, the liquor stores, like their delivery people, were getting sick. They were afraid to come into work. So they had a hard time kind of scaling with the demand for delivery. And so we tried to work with all our store partners to make it as easy as possible to deal with the new demand, but they were literally on the front lines, and it was a crazy time. We were lucky though that our customer service team was already all remote. They were already work from home, so that required no transition, no changes. They had everything they needed at home, so that was great. And then our corporate team, probably about like half or a little bit less, they were kind of throughout the country. So also work from home, but it was a shift. I think the people in New York, we all really enjoyed coming to the office. We loved the camaraderie. And we did kind of have to transition to working from home. The hours were longer because our business was thriving, and we were a small team trying to kind of juggle a lot of balls at the time. But it was also really exciting. I mean, it's fun when your business is growing dramatically, and we've been kind of waiting for that tipping point for people to really become aware of and be using on a regular basis on-demand delivery.
What
Which
did you
obviously,
observe about that time period? Like, what was the biggest trend that you saw? Yes, business was growing, but I'm sure there's like a great study of human behavior that was happening at that time too.
yeah, it was interesting. So pre-pandemic, our wine sales were 50% of our business and spirits were 30%, just for easy round numbers. And in the pandemic, spirits grew tremendously. It took over from beer. It took over from wine. I think people like really got into the cocktail culture, and we
Mhm.
saw kind of more of the long tail spirits being bought.
Mm.
I equate it to the cooking craze, how kind of all the, yeast and all that stuff was selling out because people were making bread and cooking at home. I think people no longer could go to bars and restaurants and get their cocktails. And so they were now had time at their hands. They weren't going anywhere. So they were now making fancy cocktails at home. So we really saw spirits sales go up a lot. Wine came down a little, and beer came down actually a fair amount. So people really were switching to kind of experimenting and trying stuff at home that they could no longer have at bars and restaurants.
I imagine when your business is scaling by 500, 600%, it's a real test of your leadership. What did you learn about yourself?
I learned I had to kind of let go a little bit more and trust my team. I have a wonderful team that they had all been there for years. So that was great. But I feel like you kind of have to let go a little bit more. And when you've built your own business, you want to have your hands in everything and know everything that's going on. But at that point, we were all just stretched really thin. So I just had to let go a little bit and trust and know that, I know the team, I've hired the team, and that they're going to make the best decisions and I can trust them. So I think that was a really important leadership lesson that I've taken to this day.
And what would you say was the most critical toggle that you made, like technically or strategically at that moment when you're growing that fast?
So we it's fun to build the sexy stuff that's consumer facing and like new tools and like new stuff on your website and see how that does. We shifted all of our resources to building tools for the stores and customer service because that was the area that was struggling. That's the area that needed help and would in the end help our end consumers. So we shifted all tech resources basically to building back end stuff. And the other thing we did also, which was exciting and fun, so a large portion of our business pre-pandemic was corporate happy hours. So offices ordering beer for their team on Fridays. Obviously that went to zero because no one was in the office to be enjoying that happy hour. So what we did is we saw that, and including our team, a lot of teams were doing like Zoom happy hours.
Right.
So what we shifted and we launched gift cards. So then, companies could send gift cards to everyone on their team. They could order what they wanted for the Zoom happy hour. So that business, our gift card business, really took off in 2020, and we did a massive amount of business through that. And what was kind of a great side benefit was basically other people were paying to acquire customers for us because they were sending a gift card to a friend, to an employee, whatever it might be. And that employee now has free money to go spend on Minibar and explore our site and find out about our site. So that was also a great addition to Minibar to help us kind of grow.
When you think about innovation, and I know you have now since exited the business, but when you're doing all of this stuff, how do you silo time to keep thinking new?
That's a good question. I feel like sometimes we would have like team meetings and just do like brainstorm meetings, which would be fun. I feel like sometimes you would have to just schedule like an hour on your calendar to, not have meetings scheduled or have other stuff going on to try to free up that time. I feel like it was more that like, in the morning making breakfast for my kids, like you would be you're not as focused, but you're kind of always thinking about it. So maybe thinking about ideas then and kind of your off hours. But I feel like you're always thinking about ways to improve the business, ways to improve, obviously, your like revenue. And, what's great about a startup is you can test stuff really quickly and easily. I feel like a startup's more like driving a speedboat. You can turn quickly as opposed to like a giant company, which is more like driving a tanker where it takes a lot of people and a lot of time to make a change in direction. So like gift cards, for example, we were like, let's try this out. And we kind of just threw it up there and saw what happened. And then we built it out in a much more like thoughtful, nicely designed, much more user-friendly way where you could send gift cards to like 50 people at once. Over time, once we realized that was the right move, then we focused on it a lot more and dove a lot more deeply into it.
We've got some comments starting to come in. Someone said, the team is everything. More as I read once, the more important the dream, the bigger the team. I want to invite anybody who is listening to this conversation right now to please put your questions in the comments section, and I'll ask them as we are wrapping up our conversation here with Lindsey. I want to move to the topic of succession planning because, as I mentioned, you have since left the business, but you kind of had to really think about the acolytes, the people that you're going to groom so that you can exit with peace of mind. So, how did you bring along some of the people that were maybe going into the stores and doing sales, or the young college graduate that was doing kind of Girl Friday, Man Friday things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it becomes clear who the rock stars are and the people who always go above and beyond. You don't need to give them a task. They will find something to work on. They will find the area that needs improvement and they'll just run and go. And so we were lucky to actually have many of those types of people on our team.
Mm-hmm.
Our COO, our Chief Operating Officer, started at Minibar as our Dallas City Manager. And he was absolutely wonderful. He was with us for years and years and years and just kept showing, that he could take on more, that he could do more, and just thrived. So when we sold the business to Reserve Bar, he was COO and he's since become COO of the combined entity, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then we, the same in marketing. We had a great person. She actually started out like, jack of all trades, doing a lot of customer service and stuff like that. And in the end was running all marketing and all brand advertising for Minibar. So all the branding, all our advertising, which was 50% of our revenue, she was running. And she continues to be at the, new entity, which is awesome. Or she's at Reserve Bar now, which is awesome. So it's just having those people that, our rock stars, will be partners in the journey and can also handle the ups and downs. A startup is not for everyone. It definitely takes a strong stomach. The highs are very high, the lows are very low. It's not kind of like a job, which is a little bit more steady state. So I feel like you also need teammates and partners that can handle that uncertainty and a little bit of craziness. So you
One
kind
of
of
the
need
things we always talk about, though, is that you need to make time to be a leader, right? So when you identify that this person is a rock star, you also have to put time aside from your already overloaded schedule to start grooming them for that next step. So how did you find time to make sure that these people were being brought along to eventually take over in the way they have?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the team is one of the most important parts of the company. Without them, you're not doing anything. And you need those people to, people generally don't just come to work at a startup for a salary because it's going to be less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have skin in the game, they have equity, they're excited, they want to learn. And you usually get to do jobs kind of like above your pay grade. You get to do jobs in other departments that you don't work in because it's kind of all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really giving those people the learning opportunity and giving them a voice and a seat at the table makes a huge difference. And I think having that diversity around a table and different opinions makes the company better. And so, we tried to do a lot of like team building stuff. We tried to do, all the things that make a team feel cohesive and valued, because without them, you're nothing.
What's an example of one thing that you did in the spirit of team building? Because again, this is a conversation that comes up often.
I mean, we would obviously, like, most of it's like most companies do, I guess, but we would have, like, during the holiday season, we would obviously have a team holiday event and everyone would be flown in. But we would also do the the Santa letters from the post office. We'd all work, one person on the team would manage it. We'd all request however many letters we wanted. You'd shop and buy the presents, and then Minibar would have all the wrapping paper and the, ribbon and whatnot. And so we would all have like a wrapping party and wrap all the presents we've gotten and then donate that to the Santa letters. So just doing some fun stuff. We would do volunteer events, maybe like once or twice a year all together. We would, work in a soup kitchen and do stuff like that. So I feel like those bonding things that aren't all about work bring people kind of together, and you get to know everyone a little bit better, and it's fun and it feels good. And
it sounds like you had a charitable bent to a lot of the things that you did in the spirit of team building.
Yes, some of them certainly were about drinking and like cocktail classes and doing that stuff. So we were not all altruistic, but yes, some of the events were volunteer events, which was a lot of fun.
You brought up Reserve Bar. So what happened? The company grew to a certain point and then you were ready to exit?
Yeah, so back in, I guess, early 2021, the alcohol industry with the pandemic and just kind of all these companies growing had gotten a lot of attention. Our competitors were bought by Uber Eats, a lot of the big companies like Reserve Bar raised a large round, Vivino raised a large round. So we thought we were getting a lot of interest from other players in the industry. So we decided it was our time to explore what's next. Obviously, we had investors. We'd been doing this for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. So we thought it was time to find a partner. So we went through the normal M&A process and, found great partners in Reserve Bar and moved forward with them and ultimately closed that deal in November of 2021. And so, they are now the owners of Minibar. Most of the team is there. And they're taking over and helping the combined entity and Minibar grow and take it to the next level.
I noticed there's some questions coming in. Please put them in the comment section so I can ask them directly to Lindsey, and you have direct access to Lindsey to ask whatever's top of mind. So what's next? You've given up baby number 1. Now you have baby 2 and 3 in your house, but
only 2 at the moment, but yes.
Baby number 1, I'm assuming it was your business.
Yes. So, I think I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So always thinking about the next idea. I think it's a little bit scary because, when you pick the idea and move forward, you feel like you're committing the next 5 to 10 years. Because once you hire people, raise money, you made a promise and a commitment. So I'm at that exploratory phase now and, networking, talking to people about ideas, researching ideas. But I don't have the one, or I'm not sure if I have the one that I'm going to do next, but I'm excited. I like the early stage. I like hiring teams. I like, knowing everyone's name on your team and doing, getting to know everyone. So I'm excited for what's next. I just don't know what it is yet.
Well, for anybody who is in your shoes and is maybe thinking about what they want to do for the first time, how do you structure that process? Because now all of a sudden I'm not saying you've got loads of time on your hands, but that time becomes a big amoeba. It's to be managed in a constructive way. So what's the advice that you provide to somebody who's in that space now?
Yeah, so I've done a couple things. One is right when I left Reserve Bar, I wanted to make sure that doing another entrepreneurial venture was what I wanted to do. So I explored both working in a larger company as well as jumping to the other side of the table and exploring venture capital. Talking to people in both of those positions, I realized that, I do want to do another startup. So that was the first step. And then I made a list of ideas and started crossing the silly ones off the list. Sometimes if the idea I'm really interested in, I might build a quick financial model that's super duper simple just to see if the numbers make sense at a very high level. I have other friends who are in between roles as well. Maybe they've exited or they're, switching jobs. So I'll brainstorm with them and have calls and be like, oh, can I tell you this idea? What do you think? And they're and they'll usually provide great insights or a snippet here, or you should talk to my friend here. And so I follow that down the rabbit hole. And yeah, so, I think it's really helpful to bounce ideas off of people instead of sitting just alone in my apartment at my computer for hours on end in my own head. So I do really enjoy meeting other entrepreneurs, bouncing my ideas, meeting people in the industry. But I do worry that it will just keep going and I need to commit to something.
Yeah. I, in the last while, have really started investing in a sales coach. I've invested in a business coach. And I think about how much money is going out the door. And if I really thought about it, I'd probably never get out of bed.
Right.
But, what is your thought on that? At any point in time, did you enlist that kind of help?
I have, yes. So I've had a business coach. I've had a negotiation coach. Both of them I really enjoyed working with. I had kind of like a startup CEO network roundtable. So I think we'd meet like once a month. And so we were all kind of going through similar but different issues, and everyone would present their issue, and then people would provide feedback. So that was also very helpful. Right now, I talked to someone I worked with at Quincy that also did a startup and is kind of thinking about what's next as well. So the two of us have a weekly call and just bounce ideas off of each other, and then like use our networks to kind of dive in and see what's a good idea.
Yeah. We have a question coming in. Who are 3 people that you talked to when you were trying to figure out what's next, and how did you choose them?
I mean, I'll talk to anyone, but some of the more recent people I've spoken to. So the one I was just mentioning, Ajay Corey, he started Urban STEM. So we kind of like brainstorm ideas. I enjoy his feedback tremendously. He always has great, insights about anything I'll tell him, and is always happy to lend helping advice. So he is great. I've spoken to and kind of shared ideas with people in the VC world. So Alexa Von Tobel, who's amazing and started Inspired Capital and sold her last business as well. I'll sometimes bounce ideas off of her because she sees everything because everyone's presenting to her. And then usually like my husband, I'll, get his feedback, see what he thinks from a totally different perspective. So those are some of the people I'll talk to.
I want to welcome some more questions because we've got Lindsey for a few more minutes here. Lindsey, when you think about your partner, this is something else that always comes up. The person that you marry or the person that you partner up with is often some of the most important business decisions you'll ever make. Since you broached that subject, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great having a partner to do a business with and share the responsibility. And, maybe if, there are many highs and lows, and if someone is having a tough day, the other person probably isn't and can help, talk someone off the ledge or come up with creative ideas or, help you work through something, or you can actually maybe take a vacation, sort of, because they're there to take over and answer any or put out any fires that come up. So it is great having a partner. My partner and I at Minibar, we had sort of similar backgrounds. We were both came from a marketing background, though she did more brand, I did more like direct response and growth. But I would say, a lot of VCs were asked, you guys, have the same skill sets, and we would say, no, we don't. They're actually complementary and we come from different backgrounds. But, also it's always great to have someone technical on the team as well from an early stage if you're not technical. But it is a large commitment who you're partnering with, and there are pros and cons. Like having a partner, it's great to have someone to vent to, have someone, to go out and fundraise with, someone to bounce ideas off of and really do it together. But I would say when you're actually a sole CEO, which I was the last 2 years at Minibar, you can move a lot faster. There's less like consensus being like, oh, let me check. Great idea. But before we do that, let me, run that up the flagpole or let us confer. Whereas you can just make a decision and move and run faster, and you can just respond to emails. You can reach out to VCs. So there are definitely pros and cons to that. But you need great people in an organization, regardless of if they're your partner or on your team. So that's always a requirement of a business and a startup.
I think I was talking about romantic partner too, right? The person that you marry is also a huge business decision, right?
I guess. So, I mean, my husband's like wildly supportive, and has been a wonderful partner through all the crazy ups and downs of Minibar, and is always willing to help and do whatever he can. So he's been great, and will, read through my investor decks or, our VC pitches. He's probably heard them 10 times. He could probably do this interview himself, even though he's never worked at Minibar.
When you think about fundraising, I imagine that landscape has changed drastically since you raised the first rounds of money. What would you say to that?
I would say it has not changed drastically enough. I would say it's still very heavily like male. and most of the funding still goes to male, CEOs. So I hope it's changing. And, we had Anu Dugal, who started Female Founders Fund, on our cap table. And so thrilled about that and thrilled about what she's doing and growing her fund. Each fund is bigger and she's investing in great companies and supporting great female founders. So I feel like we need more people like that and more VCs like that. But it's good people are now looking at the data and seeing how underrepresented females, minorities are in the startup landscape. But we had great, investors on our cap table. We raised initially kind of like a friends and family round in 2014, and then a venture round in 2017. And, a lot of people, all our kind of institutional investors from that first round re-upped in our second round. So people were definitely very supportive, and I enjoyed working with all of our investors. And so, would love to partner with them again going forward. But it is hard fundraising. I would think this environment is very hard. And I think, also alcohol's viewed a bit as a vice. So I think it was hard fundraising for that as well. So it's definitely challenging and, a skill that needs to be practiced.
So that's the next question. What are your top 3 tips for fundraising for money in this environment today?
Have a model and a presentation and a business plan that gets you to a profitable place fairly quickly, I would say. I would say practice your pitch a lot and start with the people that you're least interested in getting money from, so you can practice as well as understand what the questions are going to be, so you can be better prepared for each meeting after that. And I would just say, putting together a great deck makes you answer a lot of those questions. So make sure you have peers review that deck, go through it so they can see where the holes are. We actually hired a designer to help us make the deck. So obviously we made the content, but they made it look extremely polished and looked, great when we were kind of small.
What if, this is a topic that comes up as well, and this is a question. What if you're a woman of color? And, traditionally, if women don't get VC money, women of color get even less. But
yes,
access is the big issue here. That's the question. So how do you start to even begin to have access to VCs?
Yes. So, we kind of used our network. Luckily, we had other friends who had started businesses before us. So, for example, Female Founders Fund. 2 friends I worked with at Quidsi, they had started a business and had gotten funding for Female Founders Fund. So they introduced us. Obviously, we still had to, pitch, make our case, but it got us in the room, or at least got us an introduction to then have them say they would meet with us. So we did a lot of that, asking people to introduce us to other people at VCs. If a VC turned us down, we might ask them why. We might ask them who would be a better VC to partner with. Could you make an introduction? What would make you interested? What metrics are you looking for? All of those questions kind of to keep improving our kind of pitch and business model. And I hope, with the metrics that things start to change. And I hope, the biases are reduced and we start to see the numbers really improving. I think they are improving, just very, very slowly, unfortunately.
Lindsey, this has been great, and learning your story. What's a question I should have asked you that I haven't asked you? As a recovering journalist, that's always my last question I ask.
Oh goodness, that's a good question. I feel like that's actually my last reference question. When I'm doing hiring and calling references, is what have you told me that I should know in confidence? And then just let a pregnant pause. And so they'll usually fill the air and tell you something you didn't ask and were surprised to learn. So I feel like that's a very helpful question, because I do think hiring is hard, and doing reference calls, usually the references people are giving you are going to sing their praises. So kind of trying to get under that layer. so helps with the hiring. So I do think, the questions you ask when you're hiring make a huge difference. But there are no secrets kind of to pull back and reveal with Minibar. But it was a really exciting ride, and it was an experience both doing, fundraising when it's a kind of more male dominated, and alcohol is certainly a more male dominated industry as well. But that's definitely changing.
Lindsey, thank you for the time today. I really appreciate it. Any last words?
No, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, I want to just do a little pitch for my mastermind. I have a business mastermind that runs from January to December, and I'm now enrolling for next year's mastermind. And part of the programming is having women like Lindsey coming in and lending of her expertise for any challenges that you might be having. So Lindsey, thank you for being with us today. My business mastermind starts in January. And if you want to be able to enroll in that, you can always email me at joy@joyadas.com. Lindsey, have a great Thursday.
Thank you. You too, Joy. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye.